Loneliness expresses the pain of being alone, and solitude expresses the glory of being alone. Pray that your loneliness may spur you into finding something to live for, great enough to die for. We learn about life not from pluses alone, but from minuses as well. It is error alone which needs the support of government. Truth can stand by itself. Solitude vivifies, isolation kills. Let me alone, and go in search of someone else. I feel so good after a workout. Anytime you can be alone with yourself is really important. I may climb perhaps to no great heights, but I will climb alone. You cannot be lonely if you like the person you're alone with. Virtue is not left to stand alone. He who practices it will have neighbors. Freedom of being alone is intoxicating. I'm learning a lot about myself being alone, and doing what I'm doing. I never have tantrums. If anything makes me mad, I'm silent. If I'm not talking, leave me alone. Life could be wonderful if people would leave you alone. What a lovely surprise to finally discover how unlovely being alone can be. It's better to be unhappy alone than unhappy with someone, so far. It is far better to be alone, than to be in bad company. Remember, man does not live on bread alone, sometimes he needs a little buttering up. Being alone is very difficult. All men's miseries derive from not being able to sit in a quiet room alone. It is better to be alone than in bad company. If you are lonely when you're alone, you are in bad company. No dream is ever chased alone. As I get older, I'm more and more comfortable being alone. Walking with a friend in the dark is better than walking alone in the light. In the absence of any other proof, the thumb alone would convince me of God's existence. It's amazing living alone. I'm very lucky. It's like a refuge. The time you feel lonely is the time you most need to be by yourself. The people, and the people alone, are the motive force in the making of world history. The object of oratory alone in not truth, but persuasion. I restore myself when I'm alone. On stage I make love to 25,000 people, and then I go home alone. To go out with the setting sun on an empty beach is to truly embrace your solitude. I don't like being alone. When so many are lonely as seem to be lonely, it would be inexcusably selfish to be lonely alone. Thank you for leaving us alone but giving us enough attention to boost our egos. I'm never less at leisure than when at leisure, or less alone than when alone. True thoughts are those alone which do not understand themselves. Life is only a long and bitter suicide, and faith alone can transform this suicide into a sacrifice. The best of artists has no conception that the marble alone does not contain within itself. All men's misfortunes spring from their hatred of being alone. You need a whole community to raise a child. I have raised 2 children, alone. In any great organization it is far, far safer to be wrong with the majority than to be right alone. Change alone is eternal, perpetual, immortal. Using simple equipment and daylight alone is for me a pleasure and a replenishment. I would rather be alone and a loud voice for action than be silent. Eagles commonly fly alone. They are crows, daws, and starlings that flock together. Don't go away. I don't want to be alone. I can't stand being alone. Man cannot live by bread alone, he must have peanut butter. Loneliness is the poverty of self, solitude is the richness of self. The longer one is alone, the easier it is to hear the song of the earth. I have so many different personalities in me and I still feel lonely. He travels the fastest who travels alone. You aren't going to leave me alone, are you? Is he alone who has courage on his right hand and faith on his left hand? Subscribe the channel Bright Light.